Welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Mare, and we're breaking down the world of pro wrestling.
From the eyes of a smart fan.
And a casual fan, and everyone in between.
Whether you're a lifelong fan
or just getting into it,
you've got a ringside seat with us.
Okay, let's set the scene really quick.
It's WrestleMania week. The city is in chaos. The sleep schedule is non-existent. And somewhere in Las Vegas, someone just spent $18 on a beer and said, worth it.
This is the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling podcast.
And this week, we're not just dipping a toe in. We're full on diving off the top rope into madness.
Part 1, we're talking the beautiful insanity that is Joey Janela's Spring Break 10. Where the rules are made up, the bumps are questionable, and your favorite wrestler might actually be bleeding before the bell even rings. Then we're bouncing around everything that made WrestleMania week feel like a wrestling fan fever dream. And yeah, we're closing it out with AEW Dynamite because things got interesting.
And then part 2, we go full main event mode.
WrestleMania 2, Las Vegas, bright lights, big fights, and decisions that are going to have the internet arguing for the next 6 months. We're breaking down everything, the highs, the lows, wait, they actually did that moment, title changes, emotional goodbyes, surprise chaos.
And yes, we're talking about those commercials because some of y'all sat through more ads than a YouTube conspiracy video.
So whether you're here for the hot takes, the laughs, or just to hear two people question their life choices after 10 straight hours of wrestling,
crack a drink, settle in, and let's get into it.
We're going to kick the show off with Joey Janela's Spring Break 10. The first match is Grab the Brass Ring, Doors, Ladders, and Chairs match. One called Manders picks up the win against Bear Bronson and a whole host of other guys and gals. Vipress, is that a gal? 21:43 seconds. What'd you think of this match, babe?
I thought this was a good match. It was very interesting because about 2 minutes into the match itself, the top rope broke, which, in a match like this and having some high flyers and a little bit of everything, that didn't bode well, but they made the most of it. Manders picking up the win was a big moment. He got to celebrate with his former college roommate, George Kittle, in the ring. And it was always nice to see Masato Tanaka still going. He first broke on in America in probably like 97 in ECW. So the fact that it's 2026 and he's still doing WrestleMania weekend, it's awesome.
Yeah, I never thought in 2026 that I would witness Shotzi Blackheart drop kick a chair into Masato Tanaka in a wrestling ring. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, he's been around forever. He had some good matches with Hayabusa back in the day and FMW, and Mike Awesome was always a good rival with him. So it was nice to see him. He still looks good for his age too.
Shout out to George Kittle. We hung out with him at Pancakes and Pile Drivers one year. He sat right next to us. It was really awesome. And somebody else from the Panthers. But all right. Then we had a 6-man tag team match. The Rascals. So that's Desmond Xavier, Myron Reed, and Zachary Wentz pick up the win against Marcus Mathers and YDNP, which is Alec Price and Jordan Oliver. This match went for 16 minutes and 4 seconds. Joe, what'd you think of this match?
It was a fun match. I mean, those guys flew around the ring. They did some big spots on the outside, from the inside of the ring to the outside. They did dives and big moves. It was really fun to watch. I think, it was definitely very enjoyable. It was high energy, fast paced. I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, the Rascals have been on a roll. They had a great match on Collision against the Young Bucks and had a big WrestleMania weekend. Not sure how much more we're going to be seeing of Marcus Mathers on the indie scene, as with the NXT call-ups. He's probably going to be moving into a bigger spot on Evolve and potentially NXT moving forward. And Alec Price and Jordan Oliver, they're working a lot of Ring of Honor and AEW dates now. So hopefully everybody enjoys them while they can.
Agreed.
Then we had the GCW World Title match. Atticus Kogar defeats Hayabusa. Joe, can you give us some background information on Hayabusa?
So this is the second version of Hayabusa. The original Hayabusa was an incredibly gifted performer in Japan in the 90s and into the early 2000s. He was basically the franchise guy of Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, which was known as FMW, which was a combination of traditional wrestling, and then they also were notorious for the death matches and the hardcore style. He was paralyzed in 2001, botched moonsault. He landed directly on top of his head, broke his neck, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. He did eventually rehab enough to stand years later, but yeah, he passed away at the age of, I think he was 41 when he passed away. Yeah, but he was trained by Rey Mysterio Sr. actually, so he was a very interesting guy to watch. Would mix lucha libre with hardcore, with high flying. He was the inventor of the Phoenix Splash that Seth Rollins does a lot. Literally could wrestle any type of style you wanted. I mean, he had matches with Tanaka, Mike Awesome, Terry Funk, Tsushi Onita. I mean, he was a legitimate death match legend, but he also was a tremendous, tremendous high flying technical wrestler. I mean, he used to work New Japan a lot. He was just an incredible, the best way I could put it is how everyone talks about, like, oh, Shawn Michaels was, my hero growing up or whatever. A lot of the influential high flying that you see nowadays was invented by Ibusa. So, I mean, he was definitely a pioneer of high flying wrestling, deathmatch wrestling. Like I said, he was trained by Rey Mysterio Sr. So Lucha Libre. He appeared in ECW briefly. He had a match. I think it was Heatwave '98. It was him and Jinsei Shinzaki against Rob Van Dam and Sabu, which was an incredible match. Go back and watch that. That was a sight to see him in EC.
That was the
He's
first time I got to see him live.
Yeah, he was. I mean, this guy was a legend. I know this new version of Hayabusa that we just saw at spring break, he's nowhere near the level of the original Hayabusa. But when I was looking him up, he did actually get the blessing from Hayabusa's family to do this gimmick. So it wasn't something that he just kind of took on his own. So at least he did it the right way, So we'll see
Yeah,
what
that's
this
awesome.
version brings.
Steve, how'd you feel about the match? Did you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, it was a solid match. Like Joe said, he's not the original Hayabusa, and I'm not as big on Kogar as a lot of people may be. I feel that he's great in death matches, but he doesn't really move the needle for me as much like a Matt Tremont or a Nick Gage or a Mance Warner type. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with the world title moving forward.
I mean, in terms of charisma and things like that, I mean, how does he compare to Effie? Because Effie was the champ right before him, right?
Non-existent. I mean, Kogar's a total bad guy. He's got his evil family, Vandal 48, all deathmatch guys. So he doesn't have that charisma. He's more of like the evil, let's get crazy and do some wild stuff type.
Gotcha. All right, moving on. We had a tag team match. Jack Perry and Marco Stunt defeat KJ Orso and Sam Stackhouse in 16 minutes and 13 seconds. Now, when is Marco Stunt like retiring? He's retiring soon, right? He just announced it or no?
He changed his mind. He's back. He's no
Back and
more
better
s-
than ever?
no more selling cars. He's back full time. So he's going to be doing indie dates all around. And yeah, Marco's back.
Wow, that was fake out of the century.
Yeah, I mean this was a fun match. They put it together well. I think you were kind of using that emotion. The fans were like, "Oh, this is his last match," so they were a little bit more extra into it. But I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised. Now that Perry and Luchasaurus are back together still, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop up, do a surprise appearance in AEW. That'd be kind of
Yeah,
cool to see.
get the gang back together.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked how Sam Stackhouse looked like, the original one man gang with that attire. I'm a huge KJ Orso fan. We'd love to have KJ Orso on the show. I tweet all the time at him, and since he's gone away from the Fuego character, he's been absolutely amazing on the Indies. He's been working a lot of TNA shows, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be in GCW. But if he is staying in GCW, I'd really like to see him get a run with the title because he's
Yeah.
got super heat in GCW. The crowd hates him. I loved how he had the Ric Flair robe. you know, GCW fans, they're not going to want to see that. So it's awesome. Similar to like Cornette and Jerry Lawler when they were showing up to ECW. It just fits.
Yeah, he's a really good heel too. Like he's got good presence. You know, he works well. You know, he's a solid hand, no doubt.
Yeah, the fact that Jack Perry was able to pull off a destroyer to Sam Stackhouse, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, Stackhouse, he's got to be pushing 500 pounds.
I
Big
gotta
boy.
Google this guy. I feel like I've seen him, but what's his name?
Yeah,
Sam Stackhouse?
yeah, he fought KJ Orso in the cage match a couple months back.
Holy cow! I did see that guy before.
Yeah, so Jack Perry was able to do a destroyer on him, and it was a sight to see.
It's amazing. Now I'm gonna have to see how I can watch that. I saw some of the show.
Triller TV.
But then we had a singles match. The Invisible Man with Bill Alfonso defeats the Sandman in 20 minutes and 46 seconds. Let's talk about some of the appearances made during this match. Steve, take it away.
So the big one, the big surprise that got the hugest reaction was Mick Foley, who looked awesome. He showed that fire that Mick Foley has. He even took a bump, which was awesome to see. We got to see Richard Holiday coming off a big shout out on What Do You Want to Talk About podcast with Cody and Matt Cardona. We got one of my favorites, Missy Hyatt. She came out smoking cigarettes, fighting Kendra Lust. You know, it was awesome. You know, Invisible Stan was there. So the Invisible Man's twin brother. I mean, this was it wasn't the best match of the weekend. I thought it was the second best match of the weekend, but it was my favorite match of the weekend. And I went in with very low expectations because let's face it, the Sandman is not the Sandman from 1996. It's 2026, and I wasn't sure how they were going to pull it off. But once I saw Bill Alfonso coming out, I thought, oh, there's no way this is going to fail because they're going to put everything into this. And it was awesome. Fantastic match. It may seem like a little comedy based, but it was awesome.
I think the thing that makes this work is that the fans are at the building are into it. You know, if the fans are sitting on their hands and not doing anything, it really would take away from everything. So the fact that you have, you know, the Sandman working against himself and then the crowd's into it, you know, it kind of it makes it all work together. And then you had probably the most ref bumps in history, I think, in the history of professional wrestling in one match. It's like 20 refs out there. But yeah, it was entertaining. I enjoyed it, you know, for what it was, and it was probably better for Sandman to do a match like that versus try to have an actual, you know, match at the way, you know, his body's beat to hell. You know, it was probably the best thing for everybody.
Then we had the loser leaves GCW match. Effie picks up the win against Alley Catch in 25 minutes and 48 seconds. And she's going, right? She's leaving. She's going to WWE or NXT or something, right?
Yeah, she'll probably start out in Evolve. She's been taking some bookings going against ID prospects, so I could definitely see her in Evolve. She's gotten into really great shape, especially this weekend. She looked fantastic. This was, you know, an entertaining match. You kind of figured this was the way it was going to go. Effie, friend of the pod, is, you know, still doing Effie things. He's a big draw in the indies, and you know, in this household, you know, we're very big Effie fans.
Yeah, it was an entertaining match. I think, you know, one thing I think if somebody watched this you know, this show for the first time, knowing zero background on any of this, they probably would have been very confused by especially this match and, you know, in the Invisible Man match. But if you understand the story, and you don't have to understand the entire story, but if you have a little bit of background, I think anybody that had that knowledge would have really found this as a good match.
Then we had a tag team match. Megan Bayne and Nick Gage pick up the win against Mance Warner and Steph Delander in 14 minutes and 55 seconds. So we had one of the D's and the double D's.
Yeah,
What do you
big weekend for Megan Bain. This was the start of you know, many appearances for her throughout the weekend, and it was good to see, you know, a clean and sober Nick Gage back in the ring. And anytime we get Mance and SDL together, you know, you're in for a good show. I'm very high on Mance Warner. I think he's entertaining. You know, and anytime Megan Bain's in the ring, it's a good match.
Agreed. I mean, this was good to watch. And the one thing that a lot of people don't like in general about pro wrestling is for whatever reason, They don't like the male versus female aspect of it, but this is how the girls get good. When you're working with the guys who are generally stronger, quicker, it's biology, right? I mean, when you're working with higher level, it's going to make you higher level. And Megan Bain, since she's been doing a lot of these indie shows, like we've talked about how much she's improved, not only with her personality on AEW, but her in ring has gotten so much better because she's doing these types of matches. She's working with guys. She's allowed to do more, so it's bringing her game up. And I really think watching her and Steph, you could have had them in singles matches against the guys. That's how good they work. I'm all for, as long as it's done right. I'm all for these types of matches.
I think
I think
Megan ups her ante when she goes against men.
Yeah, exactly.
I
She's
think it's just it's just the, like women can do anything that men can kind of situation. And I think allowing women to fight against men is a good idea because, like you said, I do think it elevates the female talent, but also it lets them showcase their athleticism in a real, like, legitimate way, or I don't think I know what word I'm trying to use, but in a way that's like, oh, this isn't a bra and panty match. She really can do the thing. She is really strong and athletic, and I think it's, you know, not legitimizes it, but it makes it to where people can see like, oh, women should be taken seriously as, athletes and performers, and they can do, they can hold their own. I mean, case in point, AEW's woman roster is awesome. Tony Storm, Mercedes Moné, like
Yeah.
those are, I mean, and they don't really wrestle men, but still, I think women wrestling men is fine because it's different than a man beating a woman or something that people think is what's really going on. You know what I mean?
Well, it was like there was a match. I think it was on one of the Jericho cruises. This was going back a couple years, but it was, if I recall correctly, it was Kenny Omega and I think it was Riho against, I think it was Joey Janela and Penelope Ford. And when Penelope Ford got in there with Kenny, oh my God, like she looked a million times better just getting in the ring with Kenny. Like it's just crazy how that dynamic can, make things look so much better, so. I'm all for it. Not that I want to see it on TV, on national TV every week, but on the independents, I'm all for it because it helps everybody.
Yeah. And they don't let them do it on national TV anyways, like on the mixed tag matches, they make the women tag in with the women and the men tag in with the men. So we'd never see it anyways.
True.
Then we had a singles match. Brody Lee Jr. or -1, right? He's -1. Beats Joey Janela in 28 minutes and 48 seconds. So on, the hierarchy of debuts, where does this one rank, Steve?
I mean, for me, it's his first match ever, like on a big stage, the main event against someone like Joey Janela on a weekend like this. I mean, it's huge, and to be able to, pull this off was something special. Uh, you know, Brian Alvarez mentioned it, but it certainly does remind you of Nick Wayne. And, he did, moves shouting out some of his favorite people. He did moves for his dad. He did moves for Bray Wyatt. He did a V trigger. He was doing MJF's moves for like the Heat Seeker. It was very good. He won with the sharpshooter. His trainers are Natty and TJ. So, he's getting trained the right way with some of the best, and he's working with consistent few wrestlers. Up until this match, he was working a lot with Liv Morgan down at the dungeon in Florida. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. If this is his first match, it's, only upward from here. And as he gets older, he's going to start working more independence, and he has the chance to be something special. And, Brody Lee Jr. and Nick Wayne could be, the feud of the future. And, I would say it's probably, for his age, probably, the third best wrestler for his age. I would put Nick Wayne above him, and of course, Rey Mysterio, who started out at like 15 years old on the main stage in Mexico. But, for someone's first match, I mean, it wasn't as choreographed as I thought it was going to be. And, this definitely made my top three.
He's, I believe, 14 years old. He's at the age now where he can start training, lifting weights, not heavy lifting, but he can start doing some basic weight training, so that will help him obviously because he's skin and bones right now. But you could tell he was very technically sound, obviously a little bit slower than Joey, which is natural because he's a young kid. I thought overall between Joey and the referee in the ring, the communication was well, everything was timed well. You could tell Brody is trained very well. Like Steve said, he's training at the dungeon. I thought it was entertaining as hell. Props to him. You know, I hope that that kid can stick with it, you know, and props to Joey Janela too, putting over a 14-year-old kid in the main event of your own show, where obviously he could probably grab him by the neck and pin him in 10 seconds if he wanted to, and if it was a shoot, obviously. But I mean, that's the cool thing about pro wrestling is, you know, you can do things like this, and the fans were into it. Everyone enjoyed it. I was very surprised at how well Brody did, to be honest with you. I was kind of thinking he would, you know, be a little bit, you know, off on timing and, you know, a little bit hesitant, but that kid, he did a hell of a job. So props to everybody, props to, you know, his trainers and the dungeon crew as well. So it was really, really well done. So it was a great way to end the show for sure because, you know, I think he surprised everybody.
It was a huge weekend for pro wrestling. You know, I really enjoyed the Stardom show. And the big takeaway there was the continuing feud of the president of Stardom, Okada, and Tekla, who, again, she's attacked him now in three different countries: Japan, Mexico, and now the United States. So continuing that feud, which is awesome. You know, hopefully that means, you know, maybe at Forbidden Door, we can get a Saya Kamatani against Tekla, which would be awesome to see. You know, Okada sending her best to take out Tekla, which would be cool to see. The House of Glory show was a good show. You know, Effie's Big Gay Brunch. I
Loved
know
it.
that was your favorite of the weekend.
I mean, he had it was called the Big Gay Dream Match versus Zack Sabre Jr., which I think is humongous that, you know, he did that show with them. I think he's worked with Duffy before on the Big Gay Brunch, but like getting to see that match was awesome because I feel like it's Effie in a different way that we don't normally see him. He was able to kind of keep up technically with Zack Sabre Jr., which I thought was awesome. And then we had, you know, the Twink Gauntlet match and CP Gay won. That was like hilarious. Like the
Yeah.
whole thing was super duper funny. But CPA was like a super highlight, and I loved that they called him CP Gay the whole time. And then, of course, that final singles match, Dark Sheik versus Nyla Rose, who we haven't seen in a long time. You know, I think that was, you know, it was a good match. It was good to see her, and I mean, of course, it fit right in. And so, yeah, there was a lot of good matches on the Big Gay Brunch, and I mean, I loved it.
Yeah, the CMLL show was good. Joe, I don't know if you got to see that Ultimo Guerrero and Blue Panther match, but that was a fantastic match on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday. But that was really entertaining. Just a lot of good wrestling over the week, and you know it showed you the independents are thriving. And certainly, if Tony Khan keeps sending talent, you know, like sending Speedball, Kevin Knight, The Demand for the Mark Hitchcock show. You know, yeah, we didn't get to see the Ricochet Leon Slater match, but you know, we still got to see a lot of really good wrestling. And you know, I hope next year, even though WrestleMania is going to be in Saudi Arabia, there's been a lot of talk of a LA stadium show. And, you know, if Tony can run Super Weekend with Ring of Honor, AEW, MLW, you know, New Japan, Stardom, GCW, you know, MLP, you know, there's enough companies that they could put on a really entertaining weekend next weekend. So I'm hoping we get to have another fantastic weekend where I get to sit in front of my TV and watch wrestling for 4 straight days.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch as much as you this year, but you know, I did get to see a little bit of Bloodsport, which I was kind of bummed about. You know, Josh Barnett coming out and saying he's pretty much shutting it down. Which I mean, I understand what he's saying, you know, but at the same time, it's for that audience. You know, it's for that weekend. You know, it's for big show weekends. It's not. I mean, I don't think you can turn that into you know, a weekly or monthly platform because of the style. You know, I think it's cool when it's only done if, you know, here and there. So I hope someone will bring it back. But you know, that kind of bummed me out because I used to I mean I loved watching that. That was kind of the one thing I look forward to, you know, on a regular as well as spring break because they're just very unique in how they're done. So that was kind of sad. Hopefully he changes his mind or gets a backer. to help out.
All right, so that was pure chaos. Joey Janela's Spring Break 10 doing what it does best. Zero rules, all vibes, and at least 3 moments that made you question if everyone involved is okay mentally and physically.
Now, let's shift gears from the indie fever dream to prime time.
Because while Spring Break is out here breaking bones and expectations, AEW Dynamite is trying to bring some structure to the madness, emphasis on trying. Same week, totally different energy, but somewhat just as predictable.
Let's get into Dynamite.
So the opening match was Brody King picking up the win against Leo Rush in 9 minutes and 53 seconds. I feel like we don't see Leo Rush very much. I mean, is he more of a Ring of Honor guy right now, or?
Yeah, he's been working a little more Ring of Honor. He's got this new Blackheart gimmick where it's almost like he's possessed by somebody. To me, it just gives off like little Jimmy vibes, and people seem to like it. We'll see if it builds to anything else, but it was a solid match to get Brody one step closer to a world title match.
Yeah, it was basically just a 10-minute squash match with Leo doing his new character. So it wasn't anything that anyone needs to go back out of their way and watch. So
Then we had a singles match. Hikaru Shida with Chris Statlander picks up the win against Mina Shirakawa in 11 minutes and 49 seconds. We were just talking about Hikaru Shida like what last week or something. Is this the first time we're seeing her in a while now, or?
No, she's been back for a couple of shows. She's doing this interesting thing where, she's a good guy in English and then she's acting like a bad guy when she speaks Japanese. So it's certainly interesting to see. It definitely seems like she's going to make that turn sooner rather than later. And Mina seems to be blaming everybody for what happened to Tony, which could lead me to believe maybe they're going to have it be Mina. But the whole Tony thing is venturing into Naomi and Jade territory for me.
yeah, they would be they would be wise to kind of let that go for a while. I think they're just really I really don't think they know where they're going with it. So just let it sit for a while. The match itself was fine. I mean, Statlander takes the kendo stick from Shida or from Mina, and then Shida, gets the quick pin there. But I don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic right now with all three of those girls. I mean, they're teasing the heel turn, but then it could, like you said, it could be Mina. Who knows? I mean, like I said, all three of these girls are good in the ring, so at least they're not having bad matches. I'll just say that much. But the story itself is just kind of bizarre. So we'll see what happens.
Then we had a singles match. Mark Davis picks up the win against Will Ospreay. Blech. Mark Davis picks up the win against Will Ospreay by a referee's decision. This match was 15 minutes and 36 seconds. So of the three of us, I'm the one that always believes that something's really wrong with the person. And so when Will Ospreay went limp, I was like, babe, do you think he's okay? Like, did they break his neck? And
Yeah,
then
he took
the group, what's the group's name?
Death
Moxley's
Riders.
group, Death Riders. Hello. I obviously can't talk. They came in and carried him out, and I was like, oh my God, but what if he's hurt?
Yeah, it's interesting, what they're doing with Osprey. I mean, to me, it almost feels like they're killing his value before the Owen Hart tournament, which I can see, but people were so pumped to have him back, and he's just been losing everything. So we'll see where it goes. Mark Davis continues to look strong, and that pile driver on the apron. That's where I texted you last night, Joe, that I thought Meltzer was going to lose his mind over that, but it was
Yeah.
actually Alvarez who went nuts over it. And, it's interesting to see this whole Death Riders thing. It certainly feels like they're going to have another match, but yeah, it's just, are they protecting Will Ospreay from himself? Are they trying to convert Will Ospreay? The even more perplexing thing to me was right after Will Ospreay got carried away and went limp and the match stopped, we had a backstage segment from Alex Windsor where she didn't even mention her fiance. She could care less that the guy was kidnapped and his whole body's limp and he can't feel his arms. She was more worried about teaming with Persephone. So interesting full series of events there.
I think they
Yeah.
must have recorded that like way ahead of time though, because I don't fully really think that that's what they meant to do with Osprey. That's how I feel, anyways.
That's weird timing and bad placement.
I think so. But did you guys feel like Persephone's promo was like Snoozeville? I was like, oh my God, she is not compelling at all. Like,
Well, I
Yeah.
think part of it is a lot of people, they don't know who she is either, you know?
Yeah.
There's a
Well,
lot of
even more reason to go ham for the camera though. Like you people don't know who you are. You better put yourself out there.
true, yeah, I mean, it wasn't the greatest interview segment by any means, but, I mean, they were just setting up the tag match for Collision, and Jamie wasn't there, so, "Hey, we'll just throw her in there." That was probably the mindset, you know?
Yeah, I'm hoping we get a Persephone Tekla match, maybe at Double or Nothing, because I think Persephone's very good.
I
There's
do
a lot of
like her.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports going on that WWE is very interested in stealing her. So we'll see how long they can keep her locked under that dual contract.
Yeah, they're gonna try to take as many people as they can now with having AAA.
We had a singles match. Samoa Joe picks up the win against, is that Chun? Cody Chun?
Yep.
Okay. We had a singles match. Samoa Joe defeats Cody Chun in 2 minutes and 39 seconds. I love Samoa Joe. Love him. Think he's great.
Yeah, nice to see Joe back, picks up the win back in the ring. I'm very excited to see where the whole ops and hook thing goes and to see, is Joe really on board with getting new talent in, or was that hook going solo? Is Joe going to be out of the ops and it's now hooks? A lot of different ways they can go about it, but anytime we get to see Samoa Joe in the ring, it's a good time.
Who else is going to be in the ops now that Royce Keys is Royce Keys?
They've been Owens has been trying to get in. They still got Shibata, so there's a
Oh
couple
yeah, I
different
forgot
ways they
about
could go
Shibata.
about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a squash match, but Joe looked good. Like you said, glad to have him back, and I'm assuming they'll have some sort of friction with him and Hook sooner than later. So
All right, then we had our main event, the AEW World Title match. Darby Allin defeats Tommaso Ciampa in 18 minutes and 1 second. This was a bloodbath. Ciampa's face was like friggin' pepperoni pizza. It looked crazy.
yeah,
Joe, tell me about this match.
I mean, this was on, and I'm not even making this up. This could have headlined a pay-per-view. I mean, these guys killed each other. There's blood, big spots, dives on the outside. Just an insane to be on TV. I mean, that's one of the better TV matches I've seen all year from any company. I mean, these guys really had a great match. They literally left it all out there. After the match was over, Darby tapped out Ciampa with the sharpshooter or the Scorpion rather, if anybody was wondering. But yeah, and then they shook hands. Much respect to Darby from Ciampa and vice versa. And then Brody came out and issued the challenge for next Wednesday, and TK made it official. So Darby's got his work cut out for him here going into Double or Nothing. I don't know where they're going. I have an idea, but I'll let Steve touch on the match here quick.
Yeah, this was I'm not the biggest Darby Allen fan. I think he's entertaining. I've said it before, he's this generation's Mick Foley. Great to watch, but not always, my cup of tea. But this match was awesome. To me, this was probably the second best match of the year so far. My match of the year so far is that Okada, Takeshita, and the Young Bucks match. But this is definitely number two for me and shows you how good Tommaso Ciampa is and how underutilized he was in WWE.
He passed out a
Ciampa
lot
was
of
great.
kisses.
Yeah, I mean, this is like reminding me of Black and Gold Ciampa when he had that huge feud with Johnny Gargano. That was one of the better feuds that they ever had at that version of NXT. But yeah, he's been killing it since he came to AEW. I'm really enjoying his work.
And if you're Johnny Gargano, how are you watching this and not getting that itch to jump?
Yeah, I mean, him and Candice both. I mean, could you imagine Candice LeRae in AEW? My God. Uh,
Awesome. I mean, she was so good in the indies, like PWG, the cutest little tag team with Joey Ryan. Like she was incredible and she had some really good matches. And then, since she's been in WWE, she's just a joke almost, like it's just been boring.
I mean, she's a good hand, but she's another one like we talked about. She worked indies versus guys. She was wrestling Kevin Steen, the Young Bucks. Like she was wrestling guys on the independents. That's why she's such a good hand. And I mean, they don't do anything with her, but Triple H and the agents and producers know she's a good hand. That's why they keep her around. you know.
They keep her around so nobody else will snag her up, but they're not gonna do anything with her
Yeah.
like they do with a lot of talent. I've liked Ciampa since, yeah, back when NXT was the black and gold brand. Like I've loved him since then. I never really liked Johnny Gargano, but I always liked Tommaso Ciampa. I have his old like one of his old shirts and stuff. Like I always thought he was incredible, and I'm glad that he's separate from Gargano. I think that it's awesome to showcase him on his own. And I think when they were a tag team together, it was more the Johnny Gargano show. You know, he was the more popular one with the face thing, you know, the wing and I don't know. So for him to be away from him, I really like. And I mean, I don't want Johnny Gargano to come to AEW. His wife can, but he could stay. He could stay in WWE. Do you have any other thoughts about these shows before we move on to part two?
Yeah, I think Double or Nothing is starting to shape up. We're getting Okada and Takeshita, and then we're getting a rematch, Cope and Christian versus FTR. And if Cope and Christian lose, they can't team up anymore. And I think we're going to get Darby Allin and MJF again. We were just talking about, what's Darby going to do? I think Darby's going to defend that title each and every week because that's what Darby does. And I wouldn't be shocked if Darby made MJF jump through some hoops like MJF has made people jump through hoops in the past. I was tweeting it earlier today. I could see him saying, "All right, well, you got to do a couple of things. I need to see you have a death match. You could put him against someone like a Mance Warner, someone like a Brian Cage, maybe that's returning. He could make him do like some skateboard or jackass style tricks or nitro circus that would be totally up Darby's alley. Uh, it wouldn't
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
and it wouldn't shock me if before Double or Nothing we get a Sting and MJF confrontation, which would be really entertaining to see, Sting involved again a little bit, not of course not getting in the ring, but being, the supporter of Darby that he is.
Yeah, I think if they're still gonna if the plan is still to go with Will at Wembley, I don't know that Darby's the guy you want him challenging because I think your box office is MJF and Kenny. Those are your two guys. And like we talked about before Darby won, we said this was possible. We just didn't think it would happen so fast. But I think in terms of selling tickets, selling pay-per-views, it's got to be MJF or Kenny. So you either go with the dastardly heel or you go with what's going to be, the 5-7 star classic match, so there's no wrong choice, I don't think, but I think you got to get the belt off Darby onto one of those two guys before, probably by, I would say at the latest. What do you think, Steve? Forbidden Door, maybe at the latest? I don't know.
Yeah, absolute latest, I would
Yeah.
say is Forbidden Door.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel. I think we're probably all somewhat in agreement on that part of it anyway. So
Yeah, I think you definitely got to put the title back on Max if you really want to get Wembley going.
Don't even know why they took it off of him to begin with. It does not make any sense to me that Darby's the champ right now. I think that they should just have kept it on MJF. Like, why change titles so fast? You know, he just got it.
well, like this is the first time I think in the history of the company that I can recall, at least off the top of my head, that they flipped this world title so many times. You had Moxley up until July of last year, then you had Hangman, and then he dropped it to MJF not even a few months later.
He
And now
dropped it to Joe.
or Joe, that's right, Joe, then MJF. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. Joe, then MJF, and now it's on Darby. So they could
It's
flip it again here
silly.
in another month or two. So
It doesn't mean anything when you do that.
I mean, it was cool that he won it in Everett, Washington, where he got his start and trained there. But you could have done that in a year or two too, as well. It's not like it had to be. I don't know where they're going. This is not typical Tony Khan booking. So something's going on. I don't know what, but it's just very unusual for him to flip their main title like this as fast as he's been doing it.
I mean, if Darby's going to have matches like this every week, you can't really fault it.
Yeah, true. True. I mean, he had a hell of a match. I'll give him that. Him and Ciampa. Yeah.
And Brody's going to go out there, and it wouldn't shock me if Darby gets all the color in the world next week.
Yeah, he's gonna take a beating.
He's gonna snap him in half. Darby's like an infant compared to Brody. Brody is huge.
Yeah.
He's a big boy for sure.
And you get to see next week, is MJF going to be the TNT champ?
Possible. Yeah.
You know, I could see Darby coming out and costing him the match, and that's how you get to, really start to build up towards Double or Nothing for that rematch.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, that's going to do it for part 1.
From the absolute chaos of Joey Janela's Spring Break 10 to everything that went down during WrestleMania week and closing it out with AEW Dynamite. Safe to say, wrestling did not let us breathe for a second.
But don't go anywhere because part 2 is where things get really serious.
We're heading to Las Vegas for WrestleMania 42. The moments, the madness, the title changes, the surprises, and yeah, we've got some thoughts on those commercials too.
So hit that subscribe, download, do all the things, and we'll catch you on part 2 of the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling Pod. All right, guys, before we jump back into the show, I got to tell you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's looking like $1 million without spending $1 million.
If you're listening to the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling podcast, you're already a top tier wrestling fan. You care about the history, you care about the storytelling, you care about who really won that promo battle.
So why not dress like it?
Over at Pro Wrestling Tees, you can grab the official Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling merch. And buddy, this isn't some fly-by-night cheap print situation.
We're talking soft, comfortable tees.
Clean, bold designs.
The kind of shirt that works at a live show, a meetup, or your weekly pay-per-view watch party.
And here's the thing. When you rock the logo, you're not just wearing a shirt, you're repping the show. You're part of the conversation, and you're part of the community.
So do me a favor.
Right now, open up that browser.
Search Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling on Pro Wrestling Tees.
Grab the shirt. Maybe grab 2. One for you, one for the tag partner in your life.
Support the podcast, support the brand.
And look like you belong in the front row while you're doing it.
All right, let's get back to the show.